Hello, everybody, and welcome to 38 Weeks to Go, your weekly podcast about fantasy football. First of all, I just want to say a big thank you to Mr. Moses Cheggs for being available as he talked us through his Gameweek 3 performance and how he became top of the tally leader, which drove him up to number 2. Thank you very much. And if you haven't listened to that podcast, it's the one before this one. Give it a go. All right. The international break is over, and I am very happy. Very, very happy. I only have a concern though. If you even just look at the titles of the international breaks before this episode, like for last season, every time there's an international break, it seems to let us down. So, how do we avoid it this time around? So, in order to make things a bit easy, let me talk about the injuries that have happened. Most notable, I guess, would be Omar Mamouche, which might affect the Manchester derby. Dario Esugo, which really doesn't affect much, but he's injured. He's a Chelsea player. Stones picked up a knock. Dalot picked up a knock. Sarr got injured, and if you listen to the podcast before, you know there was a certain manager looking forward to having him. Saliba has been ruled out for 1 month. Saka is still out. Ben White is still out. Norgard is still out. When I look at Villa, Barkley is still out. Boubacar Kamara is still out. Amadou Onana is injured still. When it comes to Bournemouth, Unal is out. Cook and Adam Smith. Burnley, you have Connor Roberts, Jordan Bayer, Zeki Amdouni. Brentford, Nunes, Janelt, Magoma. Brighton, Webster, Solly March, Weaver. Chelsea, you have Colwill, Badiashile, Lavia, Palmer, Dilap, and the aforementioned Esugo. Crystal Palace, Riyadh, Dokure, Nketiah, Hoffa, Saar, Wharton, Pino. Everton, Patterson, Branthwaite, Adam Asnu, Mikalenko. Leeds, Ampadu, Ao Tanaka, Goodmanson, Rodon. Liverpool, Frimpong is still out even though there's still some time he might just make it back. Manchester City, this is such a long one. Bettinelli, Kovacic, Vardiol, Savinho, Cherky, Kusanov, Lewis, O'Reilly, Stones, Mamouche. Goodness, who's going to play in this Manchester derby? Lisandro is out for Manchester United. Lisandro Martinez, Cunha, Mount, Dalot. For Newcastle, Joelinton and Jacob Ramsey. For Nottingham Forest, Nicolas Dominguez. Sunderland, Alesse, Onin, Turkin, Gede, Mundle, Ballard. I swear I've never read these names before in my life. They're so funny. Anyway, Spurs, Kulusevski, Madison, Dragusin, Takai, Bisuma, Solanke. West Ham, Guilherme. Wolves, Shiwome, Hijana Hova. That's a funny name. Hugo Bueno and Jürgen Strand Larsen. So, that is the list of injured players. Now that is out of the way, the other thing you need to think about is who is coming from the furthest point in the map to England. And by that, I'm just saying South American players and maybe Australian players. Because if you remember past international breaks, you'd have situations where the South Americans are brought in second half. Somebody like Alisson might miss a match. I remember João Pedro, everyone was excited for him because he scored for Brazil. He came back, he did not play. That kind of thing is tricky. And I would discourage you from putting your South American players in particular as your captains this week. Maybe have them in case they're brought off the bench. And maybe if they were spared in terms of playing or not playing, look at that and decide whether it is worth the risk. Now, having said that, let's look at the fixtures. Arsenal will take on Nottingham Forest. Now, in case you missed it, Nottingham Forest have changed their manager. They now have Ange Postecoglou, which means that if your foundation of your fantasy team was based on defense and based on Forest defense, you have to remember that Ange is definitely not one of those defensive-minded managers. And you really have to think about whether you want to gamble on having even just one defender from this team. Because now I believe their defensive value has gone by the wayside. And something I was thinking about is now with Postecoglou and I always win something the second year. does this count as year one? Or does year one start with a new, like, proper season? Technicalities. I've already read to you the people who will be unavailable. Now, I would like to say past history matters, and if you think it does, obviously Arsenal have the advantage. They have, in their most recent encounters, Arsenal have won 3, drawn 1, and lost 1. And honestly, with Ange, I don't think he's had enough time. I am very skeptical about the progress of this team now. So I would be betting against Nottingham Forest. I'm just betting against Ange Postecoglou, really. He might be somebody who changes this team, but my memory of what he did with Tottenham in the league last season is still too fresh. Now, I've already told you that a bunch of Arsenal players are out. So who's there? Gyökeres is there. Do you want to deal with maybe Trossard or Martinelli? Maybe you were sold by Madueke's performance. I think the Arsenal players that you already have are still worth keeping, but I also do not believe it is worth it to get into Arsenal because of their fixtures. They have a few tough fixtures left, and it's not yet time to get into them, even though I think, given the change in manager, this might be more closer to the Leeds game than to what we would have expected of a Nottingham Forest game. On the Forest side, it is tough because we don't know what Ange is going to do and who he will prefer. It might be Awoni coming back. I would say don't make any rush decisions yet. Make them after this game. When you sort of see who he is leaning towards initially. But if you don't have any Forest players, I would say hold off and wait and see. I am personally still holding Ndoye, and I am hoping that he will be used. If he doesn't play this game, I will have to get him out of my team. So for Arsenal, I would say stick with your Gabriel, have your Rice, and have your Gyökeres. For Forest, I would say still stick with your Wood, your Hudson-Odoi, your Gibbs-White, and one of your defenders if you still have them, but just don't have to. I believe there will be goals in this game on both ends. Arsenal lost last time to Liverpool, and so they'll be looking to do better. And Forest drew with Palace, and so both teams will be looking for an improved performance. Moving on, we have two teams that really excelled last time out. Bournemouth versus Brighton. Brighton beat Man City, and Bournemouth beat Spurs in a 1-0 thrashing. If you don't believe me, just look at those highlights. Now, both teams had those are impressive victories, and they will be looking to build on this. Semenyo, Mr. Senesi, and let's see, Ivan Nilsson. Those would be the players I would recommend if you're looking to get into Bournemouth players or if you're looking to add. For Brighton, I would say think of Mitoma and Minte. This is a kind of game that is either going to be a draw, well, or goals will be scored, but then 1-1 is still goals scored. I believe it's going to be a tight one. And if it isn't, I believe more in Bournemouth. Even though I believe that history says that in their last 5 encounters, Bournemouth have been beaten 4 times and have lost once. So lean on Brighton if you're looking to get into this fixture. Brighton is the way to go, even though I believe in Bournemouth personally. Moving on, we have Crystal Palace versus Sunderland. Now, this is a game that could go anywhere. It's quite interesting because Sunderland have been very competitive of late, and they pulled out a late victory. And honestly, at this point, I'm beginning to think Isidore is a bit of a steal. If you needed that third striker, he is your man. He scored 2 goals in 3 games, all in the dying minutes. Clutch. He's a clutch player so far of the season. They recently signed a defender from PSG called Mukiele, and so if you're looking to get into Sunderland defense, that's who I would recommend. Or the keeper who saves penalties, Mr. Roofs. But I think they'll concede. And I still think if you just try to figure out who you want from this team, that's the real trick. Because for me, my candidates are Isidore, Lefi, Mayenda, and Roofs, the keeper. So those are the players I'd recommend right now. And of course, Adingra. How did I forget about him? Now, on the other end, on Crystal Palace, Mr. Gay scored, and I was so delighted because he scored a beauty and he gave me points. So I would still recommend him, or maybe Munoz, and going forward, Mateta. And now that Sarr is injured with a hamstring, it might be time for Eze, not Eze, to chosen. he could be a differential. Their head-to-head history is not relevant to this fixture, so I will not include it. Everton take on Aston Villa, and these teams seem to be going in opposite directions. Now, Aston Villa did make some end-of-window signings, so it'll be interesting to see how he integrates them, because when he brought in Rashford and Asensio last time, the team really kicked on after a bit of a lull. And this could be the same thing. With Sancho coming in, he adds something. He helped Chelsea win the Conference League last time out. So he has value, and maybe just having another body is having another body. Now, because of Grealish on the other end, I'm not going to recommend a defender from the Aston Villa side. I would just say, think of Watkins, Aaron Ramsey, and Tielemans. Let's see how Sancho and the rest are bedded into the game. Now, on the Everton side, honestly, Ndiaye, Grealish, and Beto scored last game. But Beto seems to be in a rotation, so it might be the other guy who plays this one. Now, Grealish is the most impressive player, and he would be the first player I would recommend you to bring into your team. He's on fire. He's had 4 assists already. Aston Villa looking weak. I think I'm talking myself into Grealish. But he's a good signing. He has performed so far. He looks like the Aston Villa Grealish and not the Manchester City Grealish. And that man is somebody worth having in your team. The head-to-head overwhelmingly favors Aston Villa with 3 victories, 1 draw and 1 loss. But their recent form doesn't. And that's the thing about history and stats and present form. Everything sort of matters. Now, of course, the international break may be what they have needed to reset, and maybe Villa just the bogey team. It isn't clear, but I will be leaning more towards Everton in this fixture. Moving on to the next fixture, we have Fulham versus Leeds. Fulham were unlucky to lose 2-0. I feel like things just did not go their way. They had, in my eyes, a perfectly good goal disallowed, and that really messed them up. And I think Chelsea got a bit lucky with the goals. And maybe that's just the kind of luck you have when things are going your way, and things are definitely going Chelsea's way. And Fulham paid the penalty, literally. Now, they'll be looking to bounce back against Leeds, who were impressive last time out. I saw Dominic Calvert-Lewin play, and he looked good. He looked threatening. He looks like he will score for Leeds. In this game, if you're looking for a Fulham player, I think you just have to go Iwobi, Emil Smith-Rowe, and Muniz or Raul, depending on who starts. It's not very straightforward right now. I thought King was low-key impressive for Fulham, and I would keep an eye on him as somebody who is a differential. And also, if you're one of those guys who likes players played out of position, you could try playing Castagna. He seems to be pushed further up because he can deliver a good ball. But honestly, King, Iwobi, and Muniz or Raul Jimenez are the people I would recommend. This game has a potential for a draw as well. So if you have your defender beat Sessegnon or Anderson or maybe Robinson, it could be worth having in this game. On the Leeds end, so far they're not looking as promising as Sunderland, but they are also not clear. It's not clear. I can't put my finger on what they are right now. It seems like they're hot and they're cold. That's all. They're the kind of team that can be hammered by Arsenal and also draw with Newcastle. So there's something there. They have unexpected resilience. I'm not sure if that's the right word. And I believe they're capable of getting many draws, 1-1s and 0-0s. Scoring doesn't look like it's going to come easy. And that makes it hard to choose Leeds players for me right now. So I would say if you're going to get them, maybe get one defender. I wouldn't encourage you to get into the attack, but getting into Goodmanson is injured, so maybe Struik or Rodon. And then if you really want one of the attackers, maybe Nonto or Daniel James, but don't get into the attack right now. Wait for Dominic Calvert-Lewin to score and then bring him on. Newcastle versus Wolverhampton Wanderers. Now, Wolverhampton Wanderers are a team that have not started the season well. They were more competitive in their last game against Everton, but I am still worried for them. And honestly, right now, I think they're the number one team to bet against. And to that end, Newcastle, this game looks good, in my view, for them and their assets. Of course, Mr. Gordon is suspended, if you remember him getting the red card for the tackle on Van Dijk. However, if you remember also, the game they played against Leeds, the Newcastle manager just made a bunch of rotations which did not make any sense to me. And he's trying to do this weird roulette thing because like Elanga didn't start and a bunch of others didn't start. And I believe if he had played his strongest team available, he would have won. I think he's going to take some time to learn that his strongest 11 is his best team and he can't rotate out of it. And now with Champions League coming up, I think it'll be an interesting tactic to bet against Newcastle either just around Champions League fixtures. It's just not clear whether to bet against them before or after, but time will tell. Last time they were there in the Champions League, they were a disaster after the match. So that's one thing to keep an eye out for. Just like Aston Villa, however, they have made signings. Newcastle signed Voltemada and Visa, and those changes should add a lot of variety going forward and make their attack interesting. And sort of in the same way Aston Villa are, with Newcastle, and also Forest, I guess, just wait and see a little bit and let's see what happens with all these new changes. It might change the fantasy landscape. So for this game, for Newcastle, I would say, Murphy, Elanga, Wisa? Yeah. And if you have a defender, why not? For Wolves, I would say Huang, Munetsi, or Gomez. In case you're wondering about their historical encounters, Newcastle lead 4-1. So they are favorites for this game, and depending on who you choose, you could really get something in here. The only problem is that we haven't seen the new signings yet, so we don't know what to make of them yet. West Ham versus Tottenham. West Ham got a surprise 3-0 victory last time out. Maybe they got Nuno sacked, but we all know there was something going on in the back. And Spurs were beaten 1-0 by Bournemouth in a very embarrassing 1-0 defeat, 1-0 thrashing. Now, Tottenham will be looking to do better. And to that end, I honestly believe Richarlison, Brennan Johnson, and your favorite defender, whichever one that is the way to go. For West Ham, Bowen, Paqueta, and Callum Wilson. That's how I will go with that game. The recent head-to-head favors West Ham with 2 victories, 2 draws, and 1 loss. So as you can see, it's kind of tight, and that's the kind of game this is. It just really depends. I think Spurs have had a better start to the season, but West Ham might have just picked up form. So I'm hoping for 0-0. No, actually, I'm hoping for Richarlison hat trick. That's actually what I'm hoping for. Let's see what we get. Brentford versus Chelsea. Unlike many fixtures, this is the one where I can see a clear winner, and that winner is Chelsea. Granted, I may be a bit biased, but honestly, when I look at this fixture list this week, in my eyes, I only see 2 easy fixtures in air quotes. This Chelsea game versus Brentford and Liverpool versus Burnley. I believe Chelsea will win. I believe Liverpool will win. Anyway, now the trick or the thing that could let Chelsea down in this game is international travel. Will their players make it back in time? Will they have acclimatized in time? Will they play the full 90 minutes, or will they come on as substitutes, or will some of them miss the match? There are too many what ifs because we've seen this in the past with João Pedro. The Brazilians and the Argentines in particular, and even Caicedo, I guess, was affected by this. You just don't know. You just don't know. João Pedro and Enzo Fernandez scored last time out, and should they play, they will be the favorites for me, along with Neto. João Pedro, Neto, Enzo Fernandez. Now, if you believe there'll be a clean sheet in this game, you could choose your Malo Gusto or Chaloba or Cucurella. On the other end for Brentford, Ouattara is their most dangerous man. He even scored a really good goal last time, even though it was ruled for offside. It was a really good goal, a really good finish. Outside Ouattara, you have Thiago and then Damsgaard. Those are the 3 I would recommend from Brentford. In the recent history of the 5 games, Brentford have won 2, drawn 2, lost 1. And they tend to win when they're at home. And they're at home in this game. However, Brentford are a different team this year and they have a different manager. So I don't think that history really applies. And also, this was during Chelsea's down period. So it's very misleading to believe in the 5 games that have recently been played. I believe Chelsea are favourites for this one. Moving on to Sunday, we only have 2 games, and it's Burnley versus Liverpool and the Manchester Derby. Liverpool are playing Burnley, and even though Burnley have been impressive, I think Liverpool, the champions, are just too far ahead. And even if they have the perfect game, they need Liverpool to have a horrible game. Liverpool, as we all know, have recruited really well and really powerfully, and they close the window with Isak. And that creates problems because now we had gotten used to this whole Salah is on the right, Ikitike is in the center, and you have Gakpo on the other end. But does this mean that Gakpo will be moved and Ikitike will be moved there and then they put Isak in the center? Or will Isak be allowed to come on as a sub? And now it's too early to know, and we will know once the game is played, I guess, and then we'll be able to at least understand how he envisions using these players. But for right now, it's quite shaky because I believe Isak will play. Where it isn't clear for how long, it isn't clear either because he hasn't really trained well. So he might not start, or maybe they might just start him to reward him and just remove him early. And those who are thinking about getting into Liverpool, I would encourage you to wait if you don't already have players. If you're waiting, if you want to add players this game week, I would say just wait. If you're not getting Salah, wait and see what happens so that you can understand how this roulette will work because this man is definitely going to be rouletting these players. So as it stands, I'm going to pretend that Isak will come on as a sub because that's what makes the most sense. And I think Slot likes the idea of people fighting for their positions. And so I think he'll make Isak earn it, or he will make Gakpo or Ekitike lose it. So maybe for just this first game, Isak will not play. So I believe your strongest options are Salah. I would say wildcard Soboslai. And then you pick between Ekitike and Gakpo. On the other end, if you believe that they will score, Liverpool's defense hasn't been solid this time round. Lyle Foster will be good. Anthony will also be good. I would say Cullen, but he will be unavailable. I don't see people getting more than 2 players, so I'll stick with Anthony and Lyle Foster. And the last game of the weekend of this game week will see Manchester United take on Manchester City at the Etihad Stadium. Their most recent 5 games is quite interesting, actually, if you think about it. It has 2 wins for Manchester City, 2 wins for Manchester United, and 1 draw. Manchester City are missing a bunch of players, and this makes them if they had a full squad, I would have said they're clear favorites. But Manchester United can't defend, and Manchester City are missing a bunch of defenders and midfielders. It's going to be interesting. I believe in Haaland. I believe he will score. Now, after that, it's tough because you just really have to depend on Doku Bob and maybe something happening through the midfield of Rodri and Reinders. On the other end, I can see Mbumo, Ahmad, and Bruno Fernandes being very important in this game, and those are the 3 I would recommend. For Manchester City, honestly, outside Haaland, nothing is forming clearly. But if you have Reinders and maybe Doku, there could be potential for something good. So, let's look at captain choices. When I look at Arsenal versus Forest, now, Arsenal looking a bit blunt without Saka, and that is what really discourages me from having this game as my first captaincy choice. So actually, let me do this the other way around. Let me start from where I think there will be easy goals. Chelsea versus Brentford, Liverpool versus Burnley. Now, Salah has delivered in 2 out of the 3 games by the football god's grace, because in my eyes he has done nothing. Now, from this game, Ekitike, Gakpo, Salah of all viable captains. In the Chelsea game, João Pedro is a viable captain. So now, in terms of ranking, those are the first 2. And then my third one would be Haaland. I believe Manchester United's defense is going to be flimsy. So I believe there will be goals in this game. I believe both teams will concede. And I believe Haaland is quite a strong threat to score in this encounter. Then Newcastle, one of those new strikers is bound to make a mark on this game. It's just a matter of I'm not sure if they're going to play together or how they will be stacked. Now, Grealish has had a hot start, and Villa are in questionable form, and I believe he's also somebody worth looking at. Then after that, it's now difficult captains. If you must get one from the Arsenal game, Madueke had a good game for England. Why not? But he tends to be so selfish. So I would be very skeptical. Maybe Gyökeres. Bournemouth, Semenyo is always a good bet. And by the way, after this Arsenal one, which I've started, that is in the order. Like, if all the people I've mentioned before are not captain worthy for you, that's when you come here. And then Bournemouth, you could go Semenyo, Brighton, Mitoma, Crystal Palace versus Sunderland, Isidore, or Mateta. Everton, I've already talked about Grealish. Fulham versus Leeds. They're goals, but I just can't see them. I mean, I don't know from where. West Ham, Spurs. I'm hoping for a Richarlison hat-trick, honestly. And also Bowen could do something. Yeah, and that's it. That's the order of captains for me. Now, moving on to the FPL FDR. Arsenal still have Forest, City, Newcastle, then West Ham and Fulham. Now, Forest might not be the difficult game I thought it was, but with a new manager bounce, anything is possible. So I'm still not going to enter them until around the West Ham game. Aston Villa have Everton, Sunderland, Fulham, Burnley, and Tottenham. Honestly, these are good games. So after the Everton game, depending on what I see from them, I might consider getting into them. Bournemouth have Brighton, Newcastle, Leeds, Fulham, and Crystal Palace. For Bournemouth, any game is winnable, and these are right around their level. Outside Newcastle, I believe they're better than all these other teams. It's just picking the right scorer. Brentford have Chelsea, Fulham, Man United, Man City, West Ham. Brentford, it is not clear who they are yet. They're looking a bit weaker, but I'm not completely convinced that they're useless. So I'm not yet betting against them, but they are still relegation favorites in my eye. Brighton have Bournemouth, Tottenham, Chelsea, Wolves, and Newcastle. They have 3 tricky fixtures, actually 4, and so they'll do well to get out of this with like 8 points. Can they do it? Yep, they can. Will they? I don't know. Burnley have a set of difficult fixtures in Liverpool, Forest, City, Villa, and Leeds. At least 3 of those games are very difficult. But they have been better than we thought they would be, so maybe it'll be fine. Chelsea have Brentford, Man United, Brighton, Liverpool, and Nottingham Forest. So the fixtures are becoming increasingly complicated for different reasons, and we're about to see who Chelsea are made out of, what they're made of, rather. Crystal Palace have Sunderland, West Ham, Liverpool, Everton, and Bournemouth. Now, the next 2 games should be winnable for them, and then the next 3, if they get 2 points, that would be not bad. I think they have potential to even win 2 of their remaining 3. It's Crystal Palace are interesting. Let's just see how they look without Sarr. Everton have Aston Villa, Liverpool, West Ham, Crystal Palace, and then Manchester City. So Liverpool obviously will be the toughest game out of all of these, and Manchester City will also be tough. But outside those, the other games, they can definitely be very competitive. Fulham have Leeds, Brentford, Aston Villa, Bournemouth, and Arsenal. I honestly don't know where to place Fulham just yet. I feel like they're having a bit of an unlucky season. Well, that's just based on the Chelsea game, if I'm honest. But I haven't formed my opinion of them, but they do have a good manager and they should be fine. And if that is true, I can see them getting a result at Leeds and Brentford and even Villa, and then maybe stumbling at Arsenal and Bournemouth. So if you get the right asset of Fulham, maybe King would be somebody to invest in. Leeds have Fulham, Wolves, Bournemouth, Tottenham, and Burnley. Leeds also, just like Fulham, I can't place them yet. The sample size is too small, but they have been competitive. And competitive they should continue to be. They're not particularly facing anybody difficult, like Arsenal, who hammered them. And since they're not playing anybody at that level, I think they can get the 0-0 results like they did against Newcastle. So it'll be interesting to watch them. Liverpool have Burnley, Everton, Crystal Palace, Chelsea, Man United. Chelsea will be the hardest game out of these, Burnley's potentially tricky. Everton is also potentially tricky. But I think they have enough to see themselves through. They are the champions after all. Manchester City have Man United, Arsenal, Burnley, Brentford, and Everton. So if you're looking to get into Manchester City, I would say get into them after the Arsenal game. At least some players would have healed and come back, and they'll be more competitive. But honestly, if you tell me Ahmad is going to score against Manchester City, I would believe you. And I don't know. They have got so many injuries, it's hard to believe in them. Man United have Man City, Chelsea, Brentford, Sunderland, and then Liverpool. So they have 3 games which will be difficult, and their defense is not great. So they really need to beat Brentford and Sunderland. I think Manchester City can be gotten at, but I think Chelsea and Liverpool might be too strong for them. Newcastle have Wolves, Bournemouth, Arsenal, Forest, and Brighton. Outside Arsenal, which they do have a favorable record, I believe they can win all of these games. It's just a matter of how do the new people integrate into their team and how fast, rather. And let's see what happens after that. But these are good fixtures for them. Nottingham Forest have Arsenal, Burnley, Sunderland, Newcastle, and Chelsea. Under the previous manager, I would have honestly told you they can win 3 out of 5. But under Ange, he will really need to hope the new manager bounce is a real thing for him. Because honestly, maybe it's going to be 2 wins out of 5. And I think their defense has gone, or at least their defensive mindset. Spurs have West Ham, Brighton, Wolves, Leeds, and Aston Villa. And when I read these fixtures out, you will understand why I have 3 Spurs players on my team. They are favorites for all of these games. I would like them to finish with 15, but if they play the way they did against Bournemouth, they will lose all of these games, literally without exception. So it's just a matter of, can Thomas Frank get them to be good all the time? And I don't mean like to be the best Spurs ever, just good, like how they were in the first or second game, because that's not who turned up against Bournemouth. If he can get them to just do what he wants them to do, then they should be good. I think they have the best fixtures out of everyone. Sunderland have Palace, Villa, Forest, Man United, and Wolves. Sunderland, we just don't know who they are, but they're looking quite promising and they have fight in them. And that means they will compete in every single game. And therefore, it will be interesting to discover who the right people are. And as soon as that is possible, I would encourage you to stay with them. West Ham have Spurs, Palace, Everton, Arsenal, and Brentford. Now, with West Ham, it's a matter of, will the real West Ham please stand up? We don't know if Potter has figured something out, or if it was just luck against an already troubled behind the scenes Nottingham Forest. And this game will tell us who they are. This next game against Spurs. Depending on this game, it will really influence my opinion over the remaining games. But yeah, that's all I have to say. I don't know what to make of West Ham. Wolves have Newcastle, then they have Leeds, Spurs, Brighton, and Sunderland. These are tricky fixtures, and thankfully they have, in their next 6, they have Leeds, Sunderland, and Burnley. In theory, these promoted sides, their peers, would provide for them a level playing ground, and for Victor Pereira to keep his job. If he hasn't won a game by Burnley, he will be sacked. That is my hot take. He needs to get results against Leeds, Sunderland, and Burnley, or he will be fired. That is what? By Gameweek 10? Yeah, by October. If he has not won a game if he has not beaten those 3 promoted sides, he will be fired come November 1. That is my hot take. Anyway, outside that, this game week kicks off on the weekend, and it's just a 2-day game week, Saturday and Sunday. So, I hope you've rested well. It's time to get back to management. See you on the pitch. Bye.